Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Clay, and I am the Bucks believer. As of right now, there are three teams in the Eastern Conference that have separated themselves from the rest of the conference. The Brooklyn Nets, Philadelphia 76ers, and Milwaukee Bucks sit 6.5 games ahead of the fourth-seeded Atlanta Hawks. It's a similar situation at the bottom of the conference where the Washington Wizards, Orlando Magic, Cleveland Cavaliers, and Detroit Pistons sit 7 games behind the 8th place Boston Celtics. That means that the middle of the East, the teams from the 4th seed to the 11th seed as of right now, are all jumbled together, and there's a pretty real chance that the Bucks could play any one of the Atlanta Hawks, Miami Heat, Charlotte Hornets, New York Knicks, Boston Celtics, Indiana Pacers, Chicago Bulls, or Toronto Raptors in the first round of the upcoming NBA playoffs. In this video, I'm going to be giving some power rankings, ranking the matchups for the Bucks in the first round from the best matchup, the optimal matchup, to the worst possible team that the Bucks could be matched up with in the first round. So we'll start off with the team that I think is the best case scenario for the Bucks, and that would be the Charlotte Hornets. The Hornets have had a great season this year where they've taken a huge step forward from where they were just one season ago. They didn't even receive an invite to the bubble last year, and the fact that they sit currently, I think, in 4th or 5th place in the Eastern Conference is really impressive. In their only matchup with the Bucks this year, they kind of demolished Milwaukee as they got really hot from beyond the three-point line in the second half and came away with a win over the Bucks. However, since that game, LaMelo Ball and Gordon Hayward have had serious injuries that will leave each of those two players out for extended periods of time, if not the entire season. While there is a chance that at least Hayward could return for the playoffs, it would cause some potentially tough chemistry situations to have a player who's going to demand a lot of the ball handling role coming off of an injury and trying to integrate him into the offensive system. That won't necessarily be the best for the Hornets, so that's one reason why I think that could be a good team to be matched up with in the first round. In addition to that, this team just has no playoff experience. Outside of Gordon Hayward and Terry Rozier, the two real veterans that get rotation minutes on this team, there aren't too many guys that have played in the playoffs before, and usually it takes a couple playoff berths in order for your roster to really be able to make a solid run at winning a playoff series. My second most optimal matchup for the Bucks is the New York Knicks. The Knicks actually won 2 out of the 3 games against the Bucks this season, but in one of those matchups, the Bucks were without basically their entire starting lineup, so I don't think you can take too much away from that. But the Knicks have taken a huge step forward this year under first-year coach Tom Thibodeau. Thibodeau has led them to becoming one of the best defensive teams in the league as they rank 3rd in cleaning the glasses metric that eliminates garbage time minutes from the situation. So the Knicks are a really tough team on that end, although I do think the Bucks offense in particular could give them some issues as they don't have a great guy to match up with Giannis Antetokounmpo. On the offensive end, it's another story, as the Knicks don't really have a whole lot of shot creation out of Julius Randle, and that could cause them to really have a hard time putting up points in a playoff situation. Additionally, they have no playoff experience, similar to the Hornets, and for that reason, I think that the Bucks could probably sweep either of the two teams that I mentioned earlier. The Indiana Pacers are the 3rd best matchup for the Bucks in my opinion. The Pacers are a solid team that have made playoff runs in the past, and for that reason, I do think I fear them a little bit more than the Hornets and Knicks, even if the Hornets and Knicks have been a little bit better so far this season. However, the Bucks have blown out the Pacers 2 times this season, and one of those games came with Giannis Antetokounmpo watching from the bench. The Pacers are also quite foul prone, and considering the wrecking bull that Giannis Antetokounmpo can be in the lane, I don't think that he's someone the Pacers are going to be able to deal with all that well. So, for that reason, I think that the Pacers are another pretty easy matchup and a team the Bucks could probably either sweep or take care of in a 5-game series. The next team, and the 4th most optimal matchup, is the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls have 2 really good all-star caliber players that make their offense lethal, even if we haven't quite seen that yet as they continue to integrate Nikola Vucevic into their lineup alongside Zach LaVine. But I really just don't think there's any chance that this team can stop Giannis. Thad Young is a really solid defensive player who has taken a huge step forward for the Bulls this season and has established himself as a great role player for the Bulls. However, I don't think that he can stop Giannis as a primary defender on the Greek Freak, and for that reason, I think the Bulls are another pretty easy matchup that the Bucks could either sweep or gentlemen sweep. After those four teams, I think that the matchups get a little bit more difficult. The fifth easiest matchup for the Bucks and fourth hardest is the Atlanta Hawks, in my opinion. The Hawks have a Trae Young-led offense, and that is pretty terrifying, as Young is a fantastic shot maker and playmaker for his teammates. However, the Hawks struggle on the defensive end, where they don't really have a player who can match up with Giannis Antetokounmpo outside of Clint Capella, who might have a hard time staying on the court in a playoff situation because his type of player, the model of player that he is as a classic big man who protects the rim and runs to the rim, sometimes has a hard time staying on the court in playoff situations. And so I think that those struggles on defense, as well as the general lack of playoff experience on this roster, makes the Hawks a somewhat easier matchup, although I do think they could really push the Bucks and perhaps steal a game or two in a series against Milwaukee. The sixth most optimal matchup and third most difficult matchup for the Bucks is the Toronto Raptors. They've given the Bucks loads of trouble in the past, as in the 2019 Eastern Conference Finals, the Raptors made pretty solid work of the Bucks, winning in 6 games, even if the Bucks did have a chance to go up 3-0 in overtime of Game 3 in that series. But the Raptors are still a really well-coached team. Nick Nurse is probably one of the 3 or 5 best coaches in the league, and they have some great positional defenders in OG Anunoby, Kyle Lowry, and Fred VanVleet. However, Toronto has really struggled so far this season, as they are sitting just 11th in the East and are just 19-30. I still think they would really give the Bucks more of a challenge than a lot of the younger teams listed before them, but because of those struggles this season, I don't think that they'd be as challenging as the last 2 teams on this list. The 7th most optimal matchup and second most difficult matchup for the Bucks, in my opinion, are the Boston Celtics. The Celtics have 2 top 30 players in the NBA in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and those 2 guys alone can give any team a lot of trouble in a playoff series. The Celtics also have Marcus Smart, who is an excellent defensive player and has given Giannis a lot of trouble in the past with his tendency to take charges and get the Greek Freak into some foul trouble. The Celtics are also a team similar to the Raptors that have loads of playoff experience, as they made 3 of the last 4 Eastern Conference Finals. They also took 2 out of the 3 games this regular season from the Bucks, including a thrashing in April in which they couldn't seem to miss any shots from the 3-point line. They do struggle to get to the free throw line, and they are another very foul-prone team similar to Indiana, and that isn't great for you when you have Giannis, who is great at drawing fouls. So I still think the Bucks would beat the Celtics. I think they'd probably win in about 6 games, but I definitely don't think that Boston is a team that the Bucks want to run into in the first round of the playoffs. Finally, we have the most difficult potential first round matchup for this upcoming postseason for the Bucks, and that has to be the Miami Heat. They destroyed the Bucks in the playoffs last season, and while they did lose some important pieces of last year's team, namely Jay Crowder and Kelly Olynyk, I still think they have a really solid matchup with the Bucks, as their 2 trade deadline acquisitions of Victor Oladipo and Nemanja Bjelica will really help them out in the playoffs, where both of those 2 guys can play big rotational minutes. Jimmy Butler is probably the best player out of these 8 teams that I've talked about, and he would give the Bucks loads of trouble in the playoffs, as he has in the past. Bam Adebayo is also a matchup nightmare. Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero and Goran Dragic can get hot from beyond the arc and give the Bucks all kinds of trouble. We saw this team and what they can do to the Bucks in last year's playoffs, so I certainly would not want to run into them in this year's first round. So let me know what your thoughts on this video were in the comment section down below. Which of these teams do you think would be the best and worst matchup for the Bucks in the first round of the NBA playoffs? Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, especially if you are a fellow Bucks believer. This is the place for you. I think that I've covered everything that I wanted to cover, so that's going to be it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again very soon.